What is up, college football lifers? Dustin here, and today I want to take a look at the Week 8 Top 25 AP poll that was just released this past Sunday. Now, this will be the very final AP poll reaction video that I put out because starting next week on Tuesday, November 1st, the College Football Playoff Committee Top 25 poll comes out, and of course that is obviously more important than the AP or the coaches poll, though I still may reference the AP poll just as a kind of, well, this is what the pollsters are thinking. Now, in case you haven't seen one of these videos yet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go down the actual AP poll and tell you where where teams rank, where teams rank, and kind of some notes I had about that. Then I'm going to give my poll starting at the bottom and working my way up to number 1, which probably should not be a big mystery who number 1 is. And I'll give some of my reasonings as to why I did what I did. As always, if you want to compare them side by side, look down in the description. You'll have the AP poll will be first, and then a slash mark, and then my poll. There's some where we meet up and we think alike. There's some where we are pretty different. And again, as a disclaimer, I did pick my top 25. I put it together. I finished it at about 1:30. They did not release the AP poll this week until about 2:30. So definitely did mine before theirs. Was not influenced by theirs at all. I just like to throw that out there because some people are like, oh, you matched this team with this team. You just mimicked the poll. No, I didn't. It's my poll. We just happen to think the same. But anyway, I'm starting to ramble. I'll leave that for the actual video, so let's get started. Again, I did not memorize this entire list. I do have a sheet of paper, so if I glance down, of course, that's what I'm glancing at. At number 1, you have Alabama. They once again got 60 of the 61 first place votes. At number 2, since Ohio State dropped, they moved up Michigan to number 2, and Michigan got the other number 1 top ranking. So Alabama has 60 of the 61, and Michigan has 1 of the 61. The rest of the top 5 is pretty predictable. At number 3, you have Clemson. At number 4, you have Washington. And at number 5, you have Louisville. Since A&M and Ohio State both lost, that was kind of the projection I figured they would take. At number 6, you have Ohio State. They dropped 4 spots to go to number 6. It's pretty interesting that they're at 6 because they have 1 loss. They're in the Big Ten. Number 7 is undefeated Big Ten member Nebraska, who still has to play Ohio State. But I think even though Ohio State lost to an unranked team, it shows you that the poll is really not respecting Nebraska. Nebraska is number 7 mostly because they're undefeated and they're in the Big Ten. They're in the easier of the 2 divisions. They haven't played Wisconsin yet, and they haven't played Ohio State yet, so that will likely change if I can be honest with how I feel right now. Number 8 is Baylor. I kind of feel they're kind of lumped in with Nebraska the last 3 weeks, I think. They have been in the exact same boat with Nebraska. They've literally been like right beside each other in the polls, moving up on bye weeks together. So Baylor is number 8, and until they play a real true Big 12 test, they're just going to be right there with Nebraska, being a little bit, even though they're in the top 10, not viewed upon with as much value as a team like Ohio State has that has seen some adversity in games. At number 10, you have West Virginia, who moved up 2 spots, which was pretty cool. They beat up on TCU. They moved up 2 spots. They're in the top 10, which has got to be a great feeling for the Mountaineers. That's great. But why did I skip number 9? Well, number 9 is Texas A&M that dropped 3 spots after losing to Alabama. If I'm West Virginia, I'm kind of pissed because now you have 2 teams that have, I said that weird, you have 2 teams that have 1 loss ahead of you in the top 10. You're undefeated. You're in the Big 12. Last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago, you held the nation's best offense to 17 points at home. Then they go and play Oklahoma, and Oklahoma gives up 59. I'm just not sure West Virginia is getting the respect that they probably feel like they deserve. I will give you a spoiler. I give you some respect, West Virginia. Number 11, you have 2-loss Wisconsin, who dropped down 1 spot and fell out of the top 10 after a 17-9 win over Iowa, and they are now number 11. At number 12, you have Florida State, which is sitting with 2 losses also, and they play Clemson at home this week. A win against Clemson gives them back into the ACC Atlantic race, at least theoretically, they still would need Clemson and Louisville to lose another game, but they're sitting in good position. So West Virginia is behind two one-loss teams and just ahead of two two-loss teams. And we are, if Ohio State and Clemson lose this weekend, Wisconsin and Florida State are in the top 10 with a shot at the college football playoff, and they both have 2 losses, so could get pretty interesting. At number 13, you have Boise State, which is putting together a very nice season. They're still undefeated. Their last 2 games, they've kind of had to survive some not great teams, but undefeated is undefeated. At number 14, you have Florida. At number 15, you have one of the 2 teams tied for the largest jump this week in the AP poll in Auburn, who moved up 6 spots from the number 21 ranking last week after scoring, I believe they put up the most rushing yards in an SEC conference game in history. They beat Arkansas, and they beat Arkansas's rushing record against South Carolina in 2007, if I have that correct, and they beat that by 1 yard, which, that's a lot of hurt in that sentence for Arkansas. At number 16, you have Oklahoma hanging in there with 2 losses. Houston and Ohio State losing this past weekend really hurts the Sooners. Number 17, you have Utah, which has 1 loss. Number 18, you have Tennessee, which has 2 losses. The top 25 becomes so much harder to put together around this time of the season because, you can't have 25 undefeated teams, right? You clearly have teams that have 1 or 2 losses, and then you have to start comparing, well, this loss is better than those 2 losses, or those 2 losses are better than this loss, but this team is an undefeated team from a lower conference, so who knows? I don't know, it just gets really weird. And in that spirit, we have at number 19, the other Tigers team that jumped up 6 spots this week in the poll. You have LSU, who ran Ole Miss out of the building, literally. I took a screenshot and tweeted it at one part of the game that Leonard Fournette had 7 carries for 249 yards and 3 touchdowns, which is insane. That's insane. They have managed to put up a new offensive school record in all 3 games under Coach O, all 3 games without Les Miles, which can't feel very good for the Mad Hatter. At number 20, you have Western Michigan. Row the boat. They're continuing to be undefeated. They're going to still make some noise. They are dropping behind. They're 7 spots behind Boise State right now. And if both win the conference championship, undefeated Western is getting left out of a New Year's Six Bowl, possibly. Boise would probably get the automatic bid. So that's a little interesting and a little worrisome if you're a Broncos fan. Western Michigan Broncos fan. Number 21, you have North Carolina. 22 is Navy. And then 23, 24, and 25 all move into the top 25 after being unranked last week. At number 23, you have Colorado, which had a big win over Stanford at home. You have Penn State, which of course knocked off number 2 Ohio State, and Virginia Tech. The next 5 up for the AP poll in order is Washington State, Houston, which fell out, Oklahoma State, Arkansas, and Troy, which is sitting at 6-1 with their only loss against the number 3 Clemson Tigers. Alrighty, well now I want to get to my top 25 poll. I'm going to try to move fast because I'm already really running late on time because I ramble. So I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up to the top in order to create some fake sense of suspense. So my next 5 up, ascending order, is Pittsburgh, San Diego State, Toledo, Virginia Tech, and North Carolina. I just don't think Virginia Tech should be ranked just yet. That loss to Syracuse still hurts, and then they wall up North Carolina, so still holding off on that a little bit. My number 25 team is Washington State. They are 4-0 in Pac-12. They had an impressive win over Arizona State. You're ranked, Cougs, at least in my poll. At number 24, I have Navy. They still keep winning. They had a 28-14 win over a Memphis team that at one time was considered for Big 12 expansion. At number 23, I have Colorado. Boy, that loss to USC hurts because other than that, their only loss would have been an extraordinarily good effort against a Michigan team that's now ranked number 2 and undefeated, and they probably would be in the top 15 in the country. Number 22, I have Oklahoma, but just their offense. I'm not ranking their defense. Their offense looked very impressive, but they were going against a Texas Tech team that decided to just play 11 people the whole game. Just 11 people the whole game, and they were only on offense, and they made no tackles. At number 21, I have Oklahoma State. They're kind of in the same boat as Colorado. If Oklahoma State didn't lose to Central Michigan, although that should be debated, they still shouldn't have been able to keep that game as close as it was at the end anyway. But officially, it's a loss. If they did not lose to the Chippewas, their only loss would be to undefeated Baylor, and they would probably be in the top 15 in the country right now. At number 20, I have Penn State. They just had their biggest win in a decade. That definitely gets you ranked. Their only losses are to Michigan, which is sitting at number 2 and undefeated, of course, and a really good Pittsburgh team that's right on the edge of being ranked. 17, 18, and 19 are like the same thing to me right now. I have 19 LSU, 18 Auburn, 17 Tennessee. All three of them have 2 losses. Tennessee's are against 2 top 10 teams in Alabama and Texas A&M. LSU's are against Wisconsin, which is the best 2-loss team in the country based on who they've played and lost to, and Auburn. And Auburn's only losses are to Clemson and Texas A&M. Both are still in the top 10 as well. To me, they're grouped very close together in every statistical category, although I think Tennessee is trending down and Auburn and LSU are trending up. At number 16, I have Florida State. I'm not going to forget that 63-20 loss to Louisville. You can't make me. It feels like it was forever ago. It was just over a month ago. So I'm not going to forget that loss. You still have 2 losses. You lost to a not entirely amazing North Carolina team at home. If you beat Clemson, you'll be in my top 10 next week, but as of right now, I still got you at 16. At number 15, I have Utah. The Utes lost to Cal, and that loss is going to haunt them, not only possibly in the Pac-12 South ratings, depending on what Colorado does in their annual matchup, but also in the rankings. An undefeated Utah team would probably be at or right in the top 10 right now, but the loss to Cal keeps you out. Number 14, I have Florida, which had a bye week this week. Number 13, I have the Western Michigan Broncos, which are still undefeated. Row the boat. At number 12, I have Texas A&M. They lost to Alabama. Honestly, to me, in the first half, it looked like Alabama was blowing them out of the game. It seemed like A&M couldn't get anything going, yet they stuck around and had a lead in the second half. And for that, I do not drop them as much. At number 11, I have Boise State. They keep surviving. They keep winning. They're still undefeated. And they may be in my top 10 next week. At number 10, I have Wisconsin. At number 9, I have Ohio State. These two teams went into overtime against each other. I think Ohio State's loss wasn't a particularly fantastic loss, but I still had to put them ahead of Wisconsin because they beat Wisconsin in Madison, as well as the fact that they just have 1 loss and Wisconsin does have 2 right now. At number 8, I have Nebraska. At number 7, I have Baylor for the same reasons I talked about in the AP poll. They're just kind of piggybacking off each other right now, although I think Baylor has been just a little bit more impressive than Nebraska. At number 6, I have Louisville. Now, they are a team that dominated the team that took Clemson to overtime. I do think it was a little bit of a hangover effect for NC State, and I think Louisville just was too much, too fast, too early, and kind of, they had some turnovers in their own red zone, so as soon as Louisville, I think, intercepted a pass on the second drive, they were already in field goal range, and Lamar Jackson is going to win the Heisman Trophy. You can't really stop or slow down that guy, so impressed me. I got Louisville up to number 6. At number 5, I have the West Virginia Mountaineers. Now, what they did last week was pretty impressive. They shut down TCU. They beat them 34-10, 31-10, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood. That was impressive. TCU's a good team. What they did last week becomes even more impressive based on what happened this week. All the records were broken in the Texas Tech-Oklahoma game, but that was in Norman. That was in Oklahoma. In Lubbock last week, West Virginia held Texas Tech to 17 points at home. They held that same offense that Oklahoma got allowed to get 59 points and 1,000 yards of offense almost. They held them to 17 points. That is damn impressive. and it is about time that they start getting the respect they deserve. I said last week in my polls that somehow I had overlooked West Virginia. Not anymore. I moved them up to number 5 in my poll this week. Please don't make me regret that. At number 4, I have Clemson. At number 3, I have Washington. Number 2 is Michigan. And, of course, number 1 is Alabama. All of those teams just shifted one spot up for me after Ohio State left. So that's my top 4. And if I had to pick right now, that is my playoff teams as well. Alabama and Clemson in the Peach Bowl, Washington and Michigan in the Fiesta. So yeah, that is my top 25 poll. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. It will be very interesting to hear what you think, especially my West Virginia pick. Do they deserve to be that high? What about teams like Wisconsin and Texas A&M still being in the top 10? Ohio State, where should they have fallen to? And should Houston be ranked? They were ranked in the coaches poll, but not the AP poll or my poll because they got beat down to SMU. But let me know down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Genuinely appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. Those are greatly appreciated. If you want to catch more college football content, it's your first time here perhaps, click the red subscribe button right there, and that'll hook you up, let you know when my videos are coming out. You can also watch other videos I have right here, which is my video on, really, the Big 12 isn't expanding anymore? Okay. Or you can watch last week's AP Top 25 video down there if you want to check out how I fared this week compared to last week and how I moved teams up. Thank you guys very much for watching. Really appreciate it. And as always, until next time. What is up, college football lifers? Dustin here, and today I want to take a look at the Week 8 Top 25 AP poll that was just released this past Sunday. Now, this will be the very final AP poll reaction video that I put out because starting next week on Tuesday, November 1st, the College Football Playoff Committee Top 25 poll comes out. And of course, that is obviously more important than the AP or the coaches poll, though I still may reference the AP poll just as a kind of top ranking. So Alabama has 60 of the 61 and Michigan has 1 of the 61. The rest of the top 5 is pretty predictable. At number 3, you have Clemson. At number 4, you have Washington. And at number 5, you have Louisville. Since A&M and Ohio State both lost, that was kind of the projection I figured they would take. At number 6, you have Ohio State. They dropped 4 spots to go to number 6. It's pretty interesting that they're at 6 because they have 1 loss. They're pair them side by side. Look down in the description. You'll have the AP poll will be first, and then a slash mark, and then my poll. There's some where we meet up and we think alike. There's some where we are pretty different. And again, as a disclaimer, I did pick my top 25. I put it together. I finished it at about 1:30. They did not release the AP poll this week until about 2:30. So definitely did mine before theirs. Was not influenced by theirs at all. I just like to throw that out there because some people are like, oh, you matched this team with this team. You just, mimicked the poll. No, I didn't. It's my poll. We just happen to think the same. But anyway, I'm starting to ramble. I'll leave that for the actual video, so let's get started. Again, I did not memorize this entire list. I do have a sheet of paper, so if I glance down, of course, that's what I'm glancing at. At number 1, you have Alabama. They once again got 60 of the 61 first-place votes. At number 2, since Ohio State dropped, they moved up Michigan to number 2, and Michigan got the other number 1. Well, this is what the pollsters are thinking. Now, in case you haven't seen one of these videos yet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go down the actual AP poll and tell you where where teams rank, also people, where teams rank and kind of some notes I had about that. Then I'm going to give my poll starting at the bottom and working my way up to number 1, which probably should not be a big mystery who number 1 is. And I'll give some of my reasonings as to why I did what I did. As always, if you want to